boats, and they tend to be well maintained. You see how this is painted well. Like people tend to take pride in their boats, and but everything's kind of set up for fishing boats. When you're tying on so there's not many floating docks. So that's my boat there, and when you're tying on, you need long dock lines. My dock line's only 30 meters, so you can go up and down with the tide easily. And if you do have a floating dock, if you do find a floating dock, there are some restrictions that you need to be aware of. I don't fully understand why you would tie seal pallets on the dock, but clearly you're not supposed to. And when it's not raining, when it's not windy or foggy, you start to see how beautiful it really is. Like it's a really pretty place. This is Red Bay, Labrador. Most of my trips to Newfoundland have been in this boat, which is a boat that was designed for Antarctica. It was designed and built in France, and it's 50 feet long, all steel construction. All the ballast is in the centerboard, so you can raise it up again in shallow places. When you're sailing, it's 10.5 foot draft, but you can raise it up, and the draft is 1.3 meters, which is more than 4 feet, but less than 5 feet. That's how she looks out of the water. The south coast of Newfoundland looks really interesting with a lot of deep fjords, but I haven't been there really. When I was on the south coast, I was in a hurry and made a few stops. So I won't talk much about the south coast. I will point out that one of the nice things about the south coast is that it's a very short sail to France, and the French islands of Saint-Pierre and Miquelon are very close to Newfoundland. You can take a ferry there from Fortune, somewhere up here, or I sailed there from Nova Scotia. And as we're approaching Saint-Pierre, we put up the French courtesy flag with the quarantine flag underneath. I have a schooner rig on my boat, so I'm going dead downwind in this picture. This sail is the fisherman staysail, and it's very light wind. It's kind of flapping around. It's not really set well, and that's just the conventional spin here. The entrance to the harbor at Saint-Pierre, looking very French. They got a nice. They like tourists here. They got a very relaxed customs and immigration procedure. It's like one form you fill out, your name, address, whether you have a gun or not, and anyone who's going to northern Canada has a gun because of the polar bears, and they're really relaxed about that. They just ask if you have one or not. They don't care about it. And you can see from the license plates that it really looks like a part of France. It is a territory of France. You are in France when you're there. And this is two of my crew. All the restaurant, everything's in French at the restaurant, of course. An awful lot, but you don't need to speak French to visit there. There's a lot of people who came to Saint-Pierre and Miquelon as nannies and domestic help, and then they stayed. So there's an awful lot of people who speak English. English is very commonly spoken. And these are two of my crew at the time. If you notice some of the earlier slides, I had a credit. That was her. She took a lot of the pictures. And from Saint-Pierre, I went to St. John's. St. John's is great because you can get anything you need in St. John's as far as provisioning, repair. It's a big enough city. I think it's 100,000, maybe more people. And it's where the red arrow is. And how many of you been to St. John's? Yeah. I love that harbor. It's got a narrow entrance. This is one side of the harbor. And it's, especially when this comes out of the fog all of a sudden, it's really cool to see the entrance to St. John's. And I like the harbor because you just go in and the whole harbor is wall, and you just tie up wherever along the wall. You see the mixture of recreational and commercial vessels, just wherever it's basically tie up. And there's also a yacht club with docks. I've never been to it, and I understand they were heavily damaged in the storm that happened a couple weeks ago. But this is not a place. Docking is not free here, but it's not really expensive. I don't remember what it costs. I'm kind of thinking it's $20 a day. In this picture, I am getting on or off this boat, Arctic Wanderer, and the captain of Arctic Wanderer, Gary Ramos here, he spent 3 years going through the Northwest Passage. He wintered over a couple times, and so I was going over to talk with him. And most of the time I really spent in Newfoundland was on my trip in 2017 when I took a nice leisurely tour. And we came in from Cape Breton and sailed up the west coast to the Bay of Islands and then to Bonny Bay. This is in Bonny Bay. You see the nice mud that you have for your anchor. This is low tide, of course. And my boat is right there. And behind that is Grossmoor National Park, which is a really big national park. You can climb Grossmoor when there's no fog. You can't. I think it's more of a walk than a climb. I didn't actually do it because my ankle was hurting me at the time, and you can't do it when it's foggy because of the danger of losing your way. But it's a big national park with this really diverse ecosystem. Anyone been to Grossmoor? And you got the T-shirt? That's great.
Did you see any moose?
Did I see any moose? I did not see any moose. Yeah, maybe you see them in the autumn. You see them on the road. I've seen them driving, but when I was sailing, no, I did not actually see any moose. This is another look at part of Grossmoor Park. It's quite dramatic, and this is in Bonny Bay. Across from that is this old abandoned logging settlement called Stanleyville, which I found quite interesting. I didn't understand what most of the pieces, it's got these pieces of stuff just rusting, and I didn't quite understand what most of them did because there weren't enough pieces left to figure out exactly what the equipment did. But I thought it made a nice contrast to the pleasant green and the blue of the sea. There's actually a lot of abandoned settlements, communities in Newfoundland. This is another one. And they're mostly abandoned because services are too expensive. So the outport communities that were only accessible by water, that they never built a road to, it became too expensive for the government to provide services, so they encouraged people to leave by buying their houses and paying them to leave. And so there's a lot of abandoned communities as a result, which is sad to see. The freight's expensive, so they didn't take things like furniture. And this house, I remember it said on the door, it says "God bless this home." It's sad to look at a place that people have just had to move out of. A lot of these abandoned communities in Newfoundland. A lot of abandoned boats too. The boats they're using are well maintained, but wooden boats, they decompose well, and they slowly go back to nothing. So that's seems quite appropriate for them. I sailed in the Strait of Belle Isle, Red Bay. Now it's in Labrador. It's here, but it's so close to Newfoundland. I'm kind of talking about it at the same time. you can take a ferry to, can you take a ferry to Red Bay? I can't remember, I know you can take a ferry across the Strait of Belle Isle, and several of these towns are connected by roads, but the road doesn't go it doesn't come down here. It won't join up with other roads in Canada. You can get to that road by taking a ferry across the Strait of Belle Isle, and then get on the road system in Newfoundland, and then there's another ferry that'll take you to Nova Scotia and get onto the road system in mainland Canada. That's one of the nice things about Newfoundland is all the wildlife. Didn't see any moose, but I did see whales. So yeah, looking at the orca is cool. This happened to be in the state of Belle Isle, but they are elsewhere. And seeing the dolphins jumping is really cool. That was also in the Strait of Belle Isle. And you just want to join them when you see that. They're so cool to watch playing. And of course, as you get on the north coast of Newfoundland, you see a lot more of ice, and it's there from January till June, or even till July. You'll still see pieces around. And you know, of course, that an iceberg, you're only seeing a little bit of it. 80 to 90% of that is underneath the water. Parts can break off at any time, or it can roll over, so you have to keep a safe distance. It's hard to quantify. And ice also makes it interesting when you're anchored. Because, like, we'll call this a growler, it's less than 5 meters long, and that's called a bergy bit because it's 5 to 15 meters long. The thing is, the ice is going to move around with the waves, whereas your boat is anchored. And if the ice comes up and gets on your anchor chain, then the anchor chain kind of grabs the ice. The ice keeps moving, working its way up towards the boat until it's run into the boat. And now you're a much bigger vessel, you and the iceberg, so it may cause your anchor to drag, and if it doesn't cause your anchor to drag, you're having an issue getting it back up. It's also very noisy, and you're bashing against the ice. But to get your anchor back up, you can't lift the iceberg off it. Of course, it's way too heavy. Think how heavy that would be, given that you can only see a little bit of it. So you might be, if you can retrieve your anchor, that's great. But it's possible that you could end up having to cut away your anchor chain and have to abandon that anchor.
Has that happened to you?
That has not happened to me. So when you're around ice, you're usually careful about, as soon as it comes towards you, start pushing it off. There are other things you can do. Then you can go forward towards your anchor, and then if you can then go to neutral or reverse, then your anchor chain is more likely to be hanging down, and you've pushed the iceberg away. It's a lot of messing around. As soon as you put yourself in forward with an iceberg in front of you, it's going to turn one way or the other, and things can get interesting. You have no idea what it actually looks like underneath the water. So yeah, that's one of the fun things about icebergs. This was all in Red Bay, which is a really protected anchorage. I rode out a storm here at anchor once. This Red Bay has a big museum because Parks Canada Museum, because they discovered a vast whaling ship that sunk in the harbor and been preserved. So they built a museum around this. From the 1500s, the Basques were fishing in the Strait of Belle Isle. So there's a really cool museum about that here. And then there's a little bit of tourism stuff outside of the museum. This guy, Ron Pike Stage. A stage in Newfoundland is a dock. That's what it means. So from Red Bay, I went around the north, and right about here is Manso Meadows, which is, it was for a decade, a Viking settlement in the north of Newfoundland. And it's been they call it. It's been dug up and recreated. So now they run recreations of how things were. You can drive to Lansdowne Meadows. Probably a lot of you have been to Lansdowne Meadows, right? No? Okay. Well, it's worth the trip. It's quite interesting. This reenactment is how the blacksmith was doing his work. So he's heated this piece up yellow hot, this piece of iron yellow hot, and he did that in just this little charcoal fire on the ground with some bellows hand powered to push air into it. So they figured they did ship repair here. And the cod are slowly coming back. It was the huge industry for Newfoundland to fishing cod, and then the cod died off and in the 90s and caused massive problems. They are coming back slowly. The commercial fishing was open for them in 2017 when I was there, but a very short season, a lot of restrictions on it. But you can still fish for them recreationally. And this is cod just drying in the sun, my boat in the background.
Richard, was that you cutting the cod in the last picture?
Was that me cutting the cod? No, I was taking the pictures trying to learn how on earth you can fillet a fish that quickly.
Did you eat it? Did you eat that cod?
I ate that cod. I ate some of them. He had about 20 he'd caught. He was just recreational fishing and he gave me one. So yeah, fresh cod is really nice. So I actually spent about 2 months from the north, just cruising this north coast, from the northern tip and along this north coast, and taking our time, looking for places to haul out the boat. And one place I found really interesting was this island in the northeast, and it's called Fogo Island, F-O-G-O. A lot of you have been there, right? Yeah, it's a cool place. They really got a sense of humor. They don't take themselves too seriously. And you know, everyone should do art on rocks. I just thought that was a brilliant idea. Art on rocks. The rock is there. Why not put some nice art on it? It's a perfect medium for art. And yeah, I said they don't take themselves too seriously. There's a Flat Earth Society on Fogo Island that operates a museum and coffee shop, and this is the entrance to the museum of the Flat Earth Society. And inside they tell you the story of how they discovered that the Earth was flat and that Fogo is one of the four corners of the Earth. And they have a bunch of exhibits explaining this. I may not have the story quite correct. I believe that people went out to a lake on snowmobiles, had some beer, observed the lake was flat, and had some more beer, observed the lake continued to be flat, had some more beer, and deduced that the Earth was flat, and that Fogo was one of the four corners of the Earth. I may have the details a little mistaken on that, but this is one of the exhibits where they've actually taken a model of the Earth, and you can see clearly the Earth is flat. It's definitely worth a trip to the Flat Earth Museum on Fogo Island. And as you said, I sailed around, and you see my boat is docked here in front of the FU Trading Company, which people on the island know stands for Fishermen's Union, but that's the way they put the sign up, just to make a point. This is actually, it's a museum now, this building, but it was the FU Trading Company. And I looked a lot of places for a place to haul out because I decided to move to Toronto, and I wanted to lay my boat up for an extended period of time. And I was restricted because a lot of the places didn't have travel lifts big enough for my boat. And I ended up, Newfoundland's an inexpensive place to lay up a boat. Everything is oriented towards fishing boats, so you don't find a lot of yacht services, but your boat, they certainly know how to deal with boats. And yeah, I ended up going to Twillingate, which is here, because they had a big enough travel lift. And they had a 70-ton travel lift. And so I hauled out here. You see my boat being hauled out. And then put in a cradle for the winter, which turned into 3 winters. That's my boat. So that's where my boat is now, in the north of Newfoundland, in Twillingate. There's a much bigger place. It's not that far away, called Lewisport. The city is bigger and the marine facility is bigger, but they are aimed at smaller boats, and they didn't have room. They didn't have travel lift capacity for my boat, but a lot of people are wintering in Lewisport. I'm wintering in Twillingate. And what I'm doing this summer is I'm starting to take people on sailing adventures, and I'm going to start from Twillingate, go to Nuuk, Greenland, and then go up to Disco Bay. Greenland is all mountains and glaciers and icebergs, and Disco Bay is just totally full of icebergs and ice, and it's a really beautiful place. And then from there go back to Nuuk, and then go down the coast to Prince Christian Sound, which is another beautiful part of Greenland, and go to Azores. So if you're interested in that or know someone who is, talk to me afterwards, please. And if you want, let's talk. And this is my contact information. That's my email. That's my website. Feel free to check it out. I got lots of stuff there. And that's my YouTube channel. There's a bunch of things there. I will be adding stuff. So if you go to youtube.com/SchoonerIssuma, one word, and if you subscribe, you can get notifications. But I've got things, various things on my YouTube channel as well. Any questions?
Did you get up to Henley Harbor?
Did I get up to Henley Harbor?
Near Red Bay.
Near Red Bay.
North of it.
North of Red Bay. No. Or at least I didn't stop there. I anchored south of Red Bay once as a temporary anchorage. I forget why. No, I didn't go to Henley Harbor.
You know why it's called Red Bay?
Do I know why it's called Red Bay?
I know why it's called Red Bay.
Go ahead.
The fast fish whalers came with ballast, which was red roof tiles. And when they fished all season, then they took the whale oil back home. And they dumped roof tiles, and they used Red Bay as their central place, and they dumped the tiles at the bottom of the harbor.
Oh, okay, that's cool. So they brought red building tiles over as ballast, dropped them at the bottom of the harbor, and that's why it's called Red Bay. Okay, that's cool.
Chris?
I loved your landscape pictures. What kind of camera were you using?
What kind of camera was I using? I'm using a Canon FX400 camera. I don't know the details on it.
That's enough.
Hello. The good story about Fogo Island is there was a woman who grew up there and got into the internet technology business and made an awful lot of money. And she was terribly worried that all the kids on Fogo Island were leaving Fogo Island and not coming back. So she built a beautiful hotel and surrounded it with an art community, and now all the kids are staying in Fogo. It's a lovely place to go.
Yeah, the Fogo Inn you're talking about. Yeah, from someone who was from Fogo Island and made a lot of money and started up this fantastic high-end hotel that employs a lot of people. Everyone in Fogo talks about that. I didn't actually stay at the hotel, that's why I don't have a picture. But yeah, she's done a great job of reinvigorating the whole island around that hotel, which is all locally sourced and did with wood, I believe, and big arts community. Yeah. It's really cool what she's done with that.
I like Mexico.
Your wife gave you the opportunity to go there.
Ray knows good things.
How do I manage without refrigeration? Here it's really easy because everything's cold, but in terms of if I'm in warmer places, how I manage without refrigeration is most of my food is dried and canned, so it doesn't need refrigeration. In tropical countries where a lot of people don't have refrigeration, you can often buy salt meat if you want that, or else you just have to buy your meat every couple. It's only going to stay for a day or two. It'll stay out after you've cooked it. It'll stay out of the fridge for a while, and you also mix spices with it, things like that. It's a process you learn how to live without a refrigeration, but mostly it's meat, like milk you can't have or it won't last long, and beer is going to be warm, so you drink red wine instead, or you go ashore and drink beer.
Always a way.
David, you had a question?
I was just going to ask if you'd been into the harbor of Issuma.
Have I been in the harbor of Issuma?
Yeah.
Yes, I have, and I considered hauling out there. It was just that they had a 30-ton travel lift, and I was hearing stories that I really liked the town because where you haul out is you're so close to downtown, and I really liked it for that reason. But I thought with a 30-ton travel lift and a boat that's probably 25 tons loaded, apparently some of the travel lifts are not meeting all their maintenance schedules, so they get downgraded. And I thought, well, if they get downgraded, then they can't put me back in the water. I want to go someplace where, if they get downgraded, they can still put me back in the water. So that's why I didn't haul out there. But Issuma seems really nice. Are you from there? You visited there?
My wife is from there, and I've visited with her quite a few times. Love the spot.
Yeah, it's really nice. And the whole town is really close to the harbor. That's really nice.
How do you spell Lassie? What is
So it's two words, LA space CIE, or SCIE. SCIE. It's two words, right?
Yeah, 2 words. Part of the French coast, so it's a French spelling for the name.
Yeah, French spelling of the name. An awful lot of parts of Newfoundland were French and have French names or anglicized versions of French names. Twillingate, where my boat is, was called Twillingate because it had a resemblance to a part of Brittany that it just looked like that, so they called it Twillingate.
Did you go for the wine or the ice cream?
Did I go for the wine or the ice cream?
Right opposite each other.
At Twillingate? No. I didn't get that choice.
Oliver, you had a question?
Where do you get the time for all these lovely trips?
Where do I get the time for all these lovely trips? I quit my job so I can
Okay, good idea.
go sailing. I got my priorities. I work so I can sail. Is kind of how I do that. That's how I've lived. I work so I can go off and do the things I really want to do, and then which causes me to work really hard when I do have to work. That's how.
Thank you so much, Richard. It's always wonderful to go back to Newfoundland, even if it is vicariously. I have been there several times and visited many of the places you visited, but not all of them. And it does make one want to go back. It is a friendly and welcoming place. And I'd like to give you a little token of our appreciation again, and let's give Richard a nice big round of applause. And next week, we have our model boat building lecture, and it will be David Ollisbrook, and I'm not sure I've pronounced his name correctly. He is the sail captain of the Metro Marine Modelers, and it's the oldest model boat club in Ontario. And he'll describe the many opportunities for folks to enjoy this hobby, designing, building, racing, and preserving all types and sizes of model ships, boats, and craft. Additionally, I mentioned last week, we have arranged that we can go to the pool, and he will give us a demonstration using one of his remote-controlled model boats. We will have the presentation will be from 1:45 to 1:15, and then we'll take about 15 minutes for all of us to get down to the pool, or up to the pool, I guess. And then we'll have a half an hour in the pool for the demonstration. And the following week, we are going to be seeing Maiden, and that's the tale of the first all-women crew to sail the Whitbed round the world race. And Paul Henderson would like to say a couple of words about that.
First of all, let me tell you, in 1948, can you believe it? The English 14-foot dinghy team was here racing against the Royal Canadian Yacht Club. And I was 13 years old at the time, and we used to sit on the dinghy docks and hope that somebody would come along and ask us to go sailing. And I was sitting there, and this rather Adonis man, English, came by and asked me if I wanted to go planing across Toronto Bay. It was Keith Shackleton, son of Shackleton, the great explorer. And if you go out into our model room, you'll see two paintings. One was done by Sir Peter Scott, son of Scott of the Antarctic, and the other one was done by Keith Shackleton. And if you get Christmas cards with birds on it, they're either done by Sir Peter Scott or Keith Shackleton. And I had the great honor of sailing with them then. Now, Maiden. The thing about Maiden is the message, not the fact that they sailed around the world, although it was incredible. A young woman, she was in her late 20s, decided to take on the men and take on the men on their terms, not on the woman's terms. They didn't ask for anything special, and the message is terrific. You've got to see this movie. And the two men who talk, they're both journalists from England, who people say, oh, those men, we should never talk to them again. They are terrific people. What they were trying to do is tell you what all the men thought about these young women deciding to sail around the world. And then when you see the final part of it, as they're sailing down the Solent, there won't be a dry eye in the room. I'm telling you, you've got to come and see it. It's an outstanding movie.
Good marketing.
And we may only have seats at the bar when we have that presentation, because I have spoken to a few of the women who sailed in the World Sharks last summer, and they said, oh, we're all going to be there. So if you want to see that, you better come. And with that, pipes out. Sorry, Richard had one more thing to say.
Oh, really?
As if I haven't said enough. I was just going to plug the fact that tonight I'm talking about sailing to Mexico and Easter Island at Whitby Yacht Club. It's $4 for dinner, and if you're interested, tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard, and again, pipes out.